All right, cool. Well, we're going to take a minute to recap this weekend a little bit, starting out with the biggest surprise for each of us for week one. We'll start with Emily and just maybe make our way down.
All right, so I'm going to shout out TSM Boogie. He might not have been a surprise to people like Nymira, who I know have been talking him up.
He's in every Reddit thread, Twitter thread.
Yeah, so shout out to him, who saw Boogie in LJL, but he started his career in LJL, has won titles in LMS and LJL, and I thought he had some strong performances for TSM. And talking to Chime, I thought it was interesting that he even called out, like, you know, the support and jungler are supposed to have really good communication. We're working on it, but we already are having a similar way of like how to approach the game. And so I thought it was cool to see that from Boogie, a player that people might not have known until, you know, this week.
Yeah, mine is, I have two. So if I steal,
yeah,
well,
okay.
I'm only going to do one of them because I'm pretty sure they're going to be common. It's TSM being 2-0, but then also TL being 0-2.
Yeah.
So you snipe mine.
Which
my 0-2.
Which one do you want me to?
You take the TSM. Well, we can just talk about both. You go ahead.
Yeah. So I had TSM 10th. I think we showed the power rankings at the start of the week. No one had them above
ninth. I don't think. I think
maybe
a lot of people
someone had them 8th. I remember that.
Fans might have had them 8th.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. 8th was all Golden Guardians, so they were always 9th or 10th.
Yes.
And yes, they did have their first game against Immortals, who was the other team they were swapping 9th and 10th on. And then you can make the argument that, hey, it was just this best of one against Team Liquid, but they also didn't look, like, to me, it didn't look like the other teams were necessarily running it down against them. They were fairly well coordinated. You already mentioned Boogie playing quite well. So, like, I'm pretty surprised about it because I wasn't expecting hardly anything from TSM.
So I was wrong, obviously, with my prediction because I put them 9th. But in my blame game, when I was talking about them, I said I can see a world where this team actually does make playoffs and is a little bit better than we're giving them credit for by playing this slow late game style with like Ornn, weak side top, scaling bot lanes for the most part. And they're not full scaling. Like they played Elise in that one game that you're talking about where Boogie looked really good, but they pick still more scaling their opponent. Like they weren't full scaling, but their enemy team was Draven, you know? And then they were able to punish that later on in the game. So I think that they do have this identity. Maple looks incredible on Azir still. Ornn, weak side, top side, as I was saying. So I saw this like world. I kind of Doctor Stranged it, but I didn't actually bet on it happening.
Yeah, and the Talia game I thought was really good for Maple. That was the one question that I had for this team was like, who is your playmaker? Because you lose Tactical, who they funneled a lot of resources into. And it could be Neo, but you know, one of these players had to step up, and it really felt like Neo had some good games, especially Maple. So that's a big surprise. I share that one. For me, it was CLG.
Yep.
The cult is right. And I remember you said it actually really well, where everything about this last year tells you this team is going to be good. But then when you see the roster changes, I had them as 6th, mostly because how can you go against TL with the roster pickups that they had? It looks legitimate, and I still think it is legitimate. I think they just had a bad week, period. You know, 100 Thieves, Cloud9, there's quite a EG. There are just a lot of teams that I think made big changes. And I think CLG has come out quite strong. What do you have? What are you holding up on now,
Man,
Jatt?
like, because I knew I was wrong when I did it, but I still couldn't not do it.
Yeah.
Like putting CLG 7th, because surely continuity matters.
Yeah.
And in the interview, they said that like Palafox said, the honeymoon phase they didn't have.
Yeah.
So they're just calling each other trash all offseason in scrims. But like apparently that was good for them. And when every year we see every team make a lot of roster changes.
Yeah.
And it usually results in the same thing once they are done gelling.
Yeah.
So surely just keeping the same 5 together will make them better than last year. And they were top half in the summer split.
But it's Schrodinger's team, because if you start to believe in them, they suddenly become bad. So if we had all said they're a top 5 team, they wouldn't have been. But because we all said they weren't, they are.
Yeah. But the advertising from all the other teams was just stronger.
They put out one meme video and you didn't buy it?
Yeah, they just advertised so much better. Like, oh, look, we brought in, like, especially FlyQuest, their advertising.
Yeah.
Which I didn't fall for, but I still put them above CLG, which they probably are. TL's advertising was strong. Korea work hard.
The thing that's super interesting about CLG to me was that thing that you already brought up that Palafox said. But then additionally, I felt like last year and I know other people have made this comparison. I might have also already have made this comparison, but they reminded me a lot of Live Sandbox in the LCK, which is, for people that don't know, Prince's former team.
They weren't that good.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is their role in the LCS last year, I think, was they had this really super early first blood time, right? They were rotating Palafox out of lane with contracts, ganking bot, and that was kind of their identity, and they forced other teams to kind of have to deal with that. Like, they forced them to have to deal with a little bit of a different play style. They brought out that look with the Akali Yone, right? And that was something that people were then forced to reckon with. And I thought that was really cool because I think it did force other teams to pay attention to them enough, and the whole league is better for having CLG in it last year. With this year, I think it's really interesting talking to Palafox about how he said, I think you can see from this game today, even though it was obviously pretty rough, like back and forth, we're gonna sit and kind of wait for our scaling to kick in for a little bit. He said, I think you can see from this game today some of the things we learned in the offseason, and he came out feeling pretty good about it, which was very interesting to me, given my perception of CLG's kind of role in the league previously.
Yeah, and saying last year's CLG wouldn't have won the game today.
Exactly.
Which they were able to come back in.
Mine, I'll go quick on Team Liquid. It was a surprise. I had a lot more faith in them. They went 0-2. They did it against FlyQuest, who didn't have their starting support, and TSM, who pretty much everyone unanimously was power ranking over them. They didn't look great as they did it either. It wasn't just like one big oopsie in the early game that snowballed. They had some leads. They kind of threw them. They played a little slow sometimes. Like, it just wasn't a great look. And I was really happy about this team. The work ethic approach they were going for, they seemed to be in high spirits.
Yeah.
And like, this is just a disappointing 0-2 that they're going to have bounce back from somehow.
Yeah, and it's a little weird for me because I had just heard about how good they were in scrims.
Yeah.
So I do wonder if it's an element of best of one shock, stage shock.
Yeah.
The back-to-back Proving Ground champions like Jan and Harry have done amazingly playing from the facility for 2 years.
Yeah.
And coming here is definitely different when you're playing with 2 world champions in Summit. So I'm hoping that it's an aberration for them because I do think they work hard and I think they have good players.
I agree with you. And I think there are 2 things that I would just look out for as like long-term maybe problems for the team. First one's just a question on Harry and P06 like 2v2 and how they actually work alongside each other. That was a question I had for Evil Geniuses when Jojo Pun first came on the scene. I think they really worked on it and got much better at it. With Team Liquid, that's just something that immediately I can see problems in and how they coordinate the gank. The Vi, dive, under turret, that's the first one that comes to mind, but there's a few. The second one is just like Summit at times dying in side lanes, which is like rearing its head.
Playoff form.
He's in playoff form already, baby. Wins lane phase, dies 4 times in side lane.
Like one of them was a legitimate Ash cross map. So like that one,
he
you
was
get a
still
pass.
going under turret with like the...
The other one, oh yeah, that one was unfortunate. I guess he got hit by Ash too many times.
A few times.
Yeah, too many times. So those are the 2 things that I think, okay, those could be long-term issues if they don't really nip it in the bud and can really create problems. The rest of them, I think, okay, like the first game, got outscaled, happens. You move on forward. So I don't think they should put too much weight in the rest of that for their team.
All right, moving on to standout newcomer. Could be a rookie, could be someone who's come over from another region. I'll go first since I went last time. Prince!
Yeah,
Dibs,
nailed it.
Dibs,
Sorry.
What's
I hate
Prince?
you.
Who's not excited about this guy? My
We all
favorite
are.
part of that last game was actually not any of his kills. It was mid lane when he just broke their ankles for like a minute, being like, whoops, bye Sej ult, whoops, bye Varus ult, and just kept poking them out. Like, that's the kind of stuff I love to see, like from Ruler back in the day when he was on Ezreal, just like shifting forward, being so aggressive and just forcing you to react to him. And you saw that from Prince there, and that's just like, this team isn't even at their final form yet, and they already look so good.
It's insane. He had perfect CS. He was playing incredibly well in bot lane. I mean, that's just something we kind of expected. I love the interview that we heard from Prince simply because like he was talking about how he just liked the fact that people around him were serious. That's what he really wanted. And the takeaway that Impact also said is like, I just want the people to know that like, yeah, this can be like a serious environment. That it's not, you're coming to North America. It's not like a retirement thing. And he loves the team that he's on. They're succeeding right now, sure. It's just the first 2 games, so he's not getting too ahead of himself. That's what it seems like. So the attitude, I feel like, is perfect for success.
Yeah. I'm going to piggyback off that because mine is Vikla. Obviously, he's not going to top Prince, but I think you got a sense of how hungry he can be to make plays from, diving under turret, the deep TP. I really love this kid. I think he's super, super talented ever since he kind of came in, subbed for Arya, and helped kind of bring the KT team that he was on to the next level. So I did want to give him a shout out because he's obviously going to be overshadowed by his other teammate that also came over from the LCS.
But he set him up a lot. There were a lot of those Vikla feeding Prince kills kind of plays. What about you for Dark Horse? Dark Horse?
Dark Horse.
Oh, not Dark Horse. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Breakout player, best new player.
You're not going to like my answer.
Okay.
I think this 80 carry that 100 Thieves has found,
Oh, God.
You're a troll.
he's got a future.
You're just a troll.
Yeah, you know what?
He hadn't played in the LCS in 2021 or 2022.
He's not a newcomer.
What's the statute of limitations on being
A newcomer?
a newcomer?
I think you expire after 3 years. He only got to 2.
He was close.
He was close.
He was close, and he's looked pretty good. Like, for me, if you don't play for 2 years,
If
You're
Cutie
new
Pie
again.
came back, I would count him as
newcomer?
Yeah, as a newcomer.
no, this is a fraudulent answer, but I do want to shout out that it's been a long time.
Yeah.
And he's actually looked pretty good.
Yeah. I'll go towards Jan. Even though I think the first week is not the best look for Team Liquid as a whole, I think he had a great Lucian game that kept him in it. Actually, the Blippo interview was a good indication of that, and also Doublelift made the call out there too.
Yeah.
Like, we saw what he looked like when he came in during lock-in, earlier, when they were having visa issues with Hansama and, specifically Core JJ. But, so I just really enjoyed the fact that he's able to come in, play. We know his skill level. We know that he's really driven, and I'm just excited genuinely to see him playing alongside Core JJ and hopefully getting a few more wins next week.